All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Right now, there is a quiet crisis literally bankrupting inefficient B2B software companies, and it's all tied to one massive problem: the ballooning of the enterprise sales cycle. If you're trying to scale a SaaS company today, you know exactly what I mean. Deals are stalling, budgets are totally frozen, and customer acquisition costs, they are bleeding balance sheets absolutely dry. So let's get right to the numbers driving this shift. 134. That's it. That is the exact number of days it takes, on average, to close a B2B SaaS enterprise deal in 2026. Think about that. We're talking about almost half a year of endless meetings, follow-ups, brutal legal reviews, and procurement hoops just to get a single signature on the dotted line. To put that into perspective, just jump back to early 2022. Back then, it took 107 days. So what's driving this massive jump? Well, it really comes down to two big factors. First, media costs are skyrocketing, meaning it's incredibly expensive just to grab a buyer's attention in the first place. And second, there's been a fundamental shift in how organizations actually buy software. Buying committees are way larger, scrutiny is through the roof, and guys, the old playbook, it just doesn't work anymore. Which brings us to part one, inside the dark funnel. So why exactly are these deals dragging out so long? Well, it's really about the sheer scale of what you can't see. Get this, 70% of a buyer's research happens completely anonymously in what we call the dark funnel. They're out there reading industry blogs, checking peer reviews, asking around in private Slack channels, and heavily scoping out your pricing page. And all of this happens way before they ever even think about contacting a vendor for that final 30%, which honestly is really just a validation phase. And that brings us to a pretty harsh reality. Take a look at this massive survey from 6sense. It absolutely nails this point. If your sales team is just sitting around waiting for an inbound inquiry to hit their CRM, the buyer's mind is already made up. They've already got their shortlist. Honestly, by the time they hit request a demo, you've probably already lost to the competitor who was actively educating them in the shadows during that anonymous phase. So the crucial takeaway here is that individual end users are simply not your leads. Look, just because someone signed up for a free trial absolutely does not mean they have the authority to actually buy. You need to shift your target to product qualified accounts, or PQAs. You have to look for behavioral signals across an entire company that tell you, hey, there's a real buying group here with actual purchasing authority, and they are gearing up to make a move.
All right, part two, the CAC payback crisis.
So this 134-day delay in the dark funnel, it sets off a massive financial ripple effect across the whole company. And the dynamics change wildly depending on your go-to-market motion. Check this out. While product-led growth motions pay back in a pretty healthy 6 to 12 months, traditional sales-led models stretch that to 12 to 18 months. But if you're running an enterprise account-based marketing strategy, wow, that payback period now stretches to a totally grueling 18 to 24 months. Let's actually slow down for a second, because we really need to highlight what that means in practice. If your annual contract value is $50,000 or more, you are waiting a full 2 years just to recover your initial marketing and sales costs from that customer's gross margin. 2 whole years. During that time, that customer is literally a drain on your cash flow. If they churn in month 18, yeah, you actually lost money on a $50,000 deal. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom here. Top quartile companies are actually surviving this margin squeeze by operating with just ruthless efficiency. The best-in-class SaaS companies right now are spending just $1 single in sales and marketing for every $1 of annual recurring revenue they bring in. They aren't just burning cash, they're compounding it. Let's move on to part 3, unifying marketing and sales. To survive a sales cycle this long, you absolutely have to ditch the old playbook where marketing just tosses leads over a brick wall to sales. According to Forrester's new framework, you need a total operational reset. You must completely merge your marketing and sales stages. You can't just track isolated individuals anymore. You've got to shift to tracking whole opportunity-centric buying groups. Marketing and sales need to share the exact same goals, the exact same data, and the exact same view of the customer right from the second they step into the dark funnel. And honestly, the technology to actually do this in 2026 is incredible. Unified teams are using intent-based lead scoring, which blends your own website data with third-party signals like competitor research to route high-fit accounts straight to sales in under 15 minutes. And the payoff? Conversion rates that are literally 2 to 3 times higher than traditional cold outreach. You're no longer guessing who's ready to buy because the data is spelling it out for you. That brings us to part 4, the expansion revenue engine. Because it takes such a massive budget and 134 grueling days just to win a single new customer, 2026 SaaS economics dictate a huge fundamental shift. Vendors have to optimize for account expansion. This stat right here is wild. For mid to large SaaS companies, more than 58% of all new revenue is now coming from expanding existing accounts. Upsells, cross-sells, seat expansions, they are driving growth way more than net new sales, which makes net revenue retention, or NRR, without a doubt your most critical business metric. So to fuel this expansion smoothly, smart companies are going all in on hybrid pricing. You get users in the door with a super low base fee, or maybe even a free tier. And that drops the barrier to entry to practically zero. But as they scale up and prove the value internally, you lock them into predictable multi-year enterprise commitments with volume discounts. It's brilliant. It gives the buyer flexibility early on and gives you that sweet locked-in revenue later. And finally, part 5, winning the long game. So after battling through the dark funnel and waiting 2 whole years just to see a payback, is the 34-day grind actually worth it? Well, the data says emphatically, yes. Look at this. While self-serve SMB accounts churn at a really painful rate of up to 7% every single month, meaning you're basically just refilling a leaky bucket, massive enterprise contracts churn at just 1% or less. Once you win them, they stay. And this slide brilliantly illustrates exactly why. Strategic alignment. Software that gets purchased directly by C-suite executives, which is standard in these long enterprise cycles, is retained 3.6 times longer than tools bought tactically by middle management. So yes, the enterprise sales cycle is an absolute beast, but top-down sales yield this incredible compounding long-term value that smaller deals just can't compete with. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take a hard look at your own go-to-market strategy. Look at your balance sheet and ask yourself this absolutely crucial question to see if you are truly ready for 2026. Is your sales team actively fighting to educate buyers inside the dark funnel, or are they just sitting around waiting at the end of it, hoping a lead magically falls into their lap? Because in today's market, if you're just waiting around, you have already lost.